Severe weather threatens lives and property, and it compounds the threat by frustrating the communications of those who are responding. Amateur radio can improve the security of communities by providing highly resilient communications on behalf of the public, for those who are responding to the emergency, and for those who are coordinating the response. We're going to see an example by showing activation of the Black Swan Net. We used an activation notice, we used asynchronous messaging, we used a watch schedule, and we operated as we have been training. We put this in use as a winter storm came through the continental United States leading up to and during Groundhog Day of 2022. Stick around.
Black Swan, Black Swan.
Before we talk about the Groundhog Day 2022 storm, think about why amateur radio has emergency communications nets. The job is to work when the primary, alternate, and contingency layers have failed or are overloaded to the point of being unreliable. The security of communities and of nations can be improved by communication. Amateur radio is a powerful and flexible service for radio communication. The technology and the licenses to operate are not enough, however. We need to have procedures for how to organize and to use the communications. We need training to ensure that the system works under stress and the operators are able to work under stress. And it doesn't need to be complicated. Simple is good. Complexity impedes action. Time and again, however, we see that there is a failure to prepare. And then there is a failure of communications. If you look at any of the responses to large-scale storms, you're going to see that response has been frustrated by a failure of communications. We need to do better, and we can do better. The Black Swan Communication Exercise Series is addressing the failure to prepare by measuring successes, identifying weaknesses, and focusing training. This happens by conducting highly realistic exercises. I want to highlight two outcomes of the Black Swan exercises. One is the Weather Alert Project, which we covered in a recent video, and the second is the Black Swan Net, a mixed voice and digital mode net. It also interoperates between amateur and U.S. government stations. Now let's take a look at the Groundhog Day 2022 storm example. As I'm describing this, think about your own ARES or emergency communications team. How would you respond? How would you staff it? How would you get the information from 5 different senders to where it needed to go within a state? A big winter storm came through much of the continental United States. The Weather Channel dubbed it Winter Storm Landon. Weather alerts for Ohio started around 4 in the morning on January 31. The event was a winter storm watch in the northwest corner of Ohio. We were able to see that thanks to the Weather Alert Project that was running at the time. About 9 o'clock in the morning, a special weather statement covering the rest of North and Northeast Ohio was issued. By 11:30 that night, Northwest Ohio got its first winter storm warning. There were a total of 25 alerts issued for Ohio that day. At this point, around midnight, starting February 1, the infrastructure was still working. The impact of the storm that was coming was unknown. It's difficult to predict exactly what it's going to do and how it's going to affect everything. There were, however, another 27 alerts that were issued over the course of the next 12 hours, and that warned area expanded to include western, central, southern, and eastern Ohio. The entire state, over the course of 25 alerts, came to be under some kind of a warning or watch. Watches that were in place were upgrading to warnings, and as we moved into Wednesday, the 2nd of February, Groundhog Day, throughout the morning, we saw another 24 alerts for Ohio. Again, many of the watches being upgraded to warnings. We were seeing warnings for snowfall up to 14 inches, and ice accumulation of 0.2 of an inch, in many cases that being before a bunch of snow. Now, History can guide our understanding of the likely impact. We don't need to be a meteorologist to understand that. In fact, we don't try to be. We're communicators. So without getting into the details of what was likely to happen, we could see that historically, events like this lead to a loss of power, lead to a loss of communication. And these happen thanks to wires that break. What we know is that there is an increased likelihood of a failure of communication circuits. So we need to establish communication plans. We do that ahead of time. We can't do that during an event. We will have to distribute those plans and anything specific to the particular event in time for people to receive it and for people to respond. We have to rely on standard practices wherever possible. We don't want to take people through a whole bunch of training at the beginning of an event. That's not the time for it. It's time to execute, not to be learning how to do stuff. So we're going to provide only new information or detail specific to this particular event. Now, some nets or systems have a notion of watch. It's very simple. It basically means that stations are going to be listening on a designated frequency for some information. You can listen for an alert, for a status message. You can receive this passively. There's no need even to acknowledge. You just listen. You can also listen for a call. In the case of a watch, even if you're monitoring passively, if somebody calls your station or calls the net to action, that's the case when you would definitely want to respond to make sure that they know you're out there. Now, we took advantage of this impending storm system to run a no-notice exercise. This is going to be just like it is in real life. While in Ohio, we tend not to have things like earthquakes that come with no warning and then the infrastructure is impacted, we tend to notice that things are coming ahead of time. We know the likelihood of problem is increasing, and so we have some chance to prepare, but that doesn't mean that we have weeks and weeks of notice and that we have a lot of time to organize how we're going to operate. Now, this was an exercise for the Black Swan Net. So how did we do it? First, we determined the mission, what a requesting agency would define and the context needed to operate. We articulated the net's mission in an activation notice. We used the watch procedure, and we performed the functions of the Weather Alert project in real time. We were to route alerts from the National Weather Service prediction offices to affected areas with the right quality of service. We were using messages that were originated by our Weather Alert project, that is, real NWS messages, real alerts, and it didn't matter that they weren't asking us to do this. The point is they were generating real messages, real alerts that had real locations to hit. So we were able to organize what we think of as a sidecar project, something that runs alongside of what is real, what is going on at the moment. By doing this, we are able to test our capability and our viability. We get rid of any kind of argument about we are making stuff up, this isn't realistic, we are following along real time and measuring our performance. So were we to erect stations in important locations? No. Did we need to provide operators to other stations? No. We were there to ensure that the circuits were active. That means operators at their home stations were on watch. They're listening for alerts. They are ready to move to an operational state if necessary. Now, if an emergency operations center or a shelter or someone else needs service, the circuits that they would need to use should be active first. A dial tone has to be in place before the phone is useful. And so when we are starting up a net, it's the equivalent of providing a dial tone. That's what the net control operator is there for, even if only in a passive state of watch. So, when we go into the detail of our activation notice, we use a 5-paragraph order format. It's easy to understand, it's easy to complete, it has lots of references for how to understand it, and we can get everything that we need for being able to function. We use the paragraphs that we need, we can skip the others, and so that's one of the things that's so wonderful about this format. It does, however, always come in 5 sections. We think of them as paragraphs. That's the situation, the mission, execution, administration, and then the control of the operation or of the net. And these are paragraphs 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Very, very standard format, very easy to know where to look for some particular piece of information. Now, the Black Swan Net already has an activation notice with a schedule of regular operations. We're operating weekly, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. We operate during daytime. We operate on 5 megahertz. We operate in the evening on 3.5 megahertz. So, we have something that is already in place. What that means is that when there is a particular event that comes up, we can declare a special operation. The special operation does not need to be a brand new definition completely out of whole cloth. We can simply issue a fragmentary alert, a fragmentary notice that says this is what we're going to be doing. It will augment the existing activation notice with additional detail for a particular period of time. So when you put the fragment together with the complete picture, you can see how the net is going to operate. When the whole thing is over, the fragment will expire, and what's remaining is the regular notice. So take a look at the links below. You're going to be able to see the standard Black Swan Net activation. You're going to see then the special operation activation that we issued, and then you're going to see the additional information that we issued. We're going to come back next week and we will go into some detail. We will discuss the specifics of what it is that we were doing there. We're going to take a look at the messages that were actually relayed during the course of our activation, how we actually performed, and from there we're going to take a look at what our improvement plan looks like so that we will be ready for Black Swan 22 in the fall, as well as any real event that requires us to be able to communicate effectively. Until then, this is Radio KD8TTE out.